Hey, Andrea, thanks for coming on the podcast. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, really looking forward to it.
So, we're going to be talking about all things apprenticeships.
hmm
I know you have a particular kind of expertise around kind of Ofsted readiness and kind of making sure programs are run well and to a high standard. So, I'm sure we're going to learn lots from you. Do you want to give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself? Tell us about yourself, what you do.
Okay, well, I've been involved in apprenticeships from 1993, long time. So that's been from an assessor, college tutor, up to senior management. I've worked in colleges, I've worked in big organisations, and I've worked in very small organisations. In 2020, I came out of working for others because actually I found that if we know what the learner is actually experiencing before anybody else comes in to check, if we learn what they're experiencing and then can do something about it to make that experience better, then that's really helpful for anybody who wants to come in. So, what I'm not about is about being Ofsted ready. What I want really is that the learner's experience is good. So that's sort of why I came out. So I came out in the middle of the pandemic, the lockdown. Well done. Thinking that because it was
Mhm.
technologically based, the company, and it was all going to be done on Zoom, it wouldn't make any difference at all. Well, of course it did. It made a huge difference. But there'll be my third year now, and I've been working with training providers, and now finding getting out is a little bit better. However, I do tend to do most of my work talking to learners, employers, staff, etc. on the phone. So I'm finding that I'm I'm getting used to technology more and more. If you've
Yeah.
seen any of my posts, you'll see there was a journey that I got used to it as time went on. So
That's
that's
fantastic.
me
We're
really.
all on a journey, aren't we? We need to
Oh,
embrace the journey. It's a learning journey for all of us. Even myself, I suppose, I should be technically confident because of my background and everything. Even COVID was a big step
oh,
change, but a catalyst for good in many ways. I think.
I think it was. I think it was. I think for training providers, though, it was a surprise, a complete surprise. And it changed our way of having to deliver training. And this is in colleges as well. Colleges, training providers all had to change their delivery overnight. And that in itself created a perfect storm because the tutors we had um, weren't trained in
Yep.
computer technology. I spoke to one college tutor who was trying to teach English, and her learners, her students were saying, "You need to press that button. You're on mute." Because she didn't, there was no training, and of course, what everybody found was teaching over interactively is completely different to teaching face to face. So I think the pandemic for every training organization was either a blip, and some training providers came out very well, but others found it really, really difficult to get over. And of course, it's something that carries on. We will carry on because I don't think we'll go back to the all face to face training that we had.
Yep.
And why should we really?
Yeah.
Um,
Indeed.
but it is a learning curve, as you say, a learning curve, a journey for all of us.
Yeah. That's it. So I can certainly relate to that. I think it was a shock for a lot, a shock to the system for many. Being in higher education myself, so degree apprenticeships, yeah, as well. A lot of my colleagues, even being teaching computing topics, it was still a big shock to many of them. And I know my teaching approach has changed a lot, where you have to structure interactions, you have to structure activities, and you have to structure these opportunities for collaboration and collaborative learning so much more carefully because they can happen online. And
Mhm.
when I teach now, not only I hate the sound of my own voice anyway, but now I try to never lecture online. It's either we have a little bit of pre-recorded content, and then if we're online together, we make the most of it with discussions. And I try and get them to do as much of the talking as possible.
Yeah, but I think when we're talking, like, there was I was doing an inquiry during the pandemic in the midst of it, and I was talking to learners who were doing level 2 IT.
Yep.
So they'd never used a computer. They were doing it basically so that they could complete a CV. Yeah.
Sure.
And the learner was finding it really difficult because the program sounded like it was quite clunky anyway, and they couldn't get past a certain part of the program. And when he phoned the training provider up, they said, "We'll take a screenshot." And he went, "I don't know how to take a screenshot."
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think, well, that must be really difficult to do IT online anyway, because it's really difficult. It's the same with maths, isn't it? Sometimes when you're doing it online, if you don't get something, if you don't get a concept, to just keep going over the same page because it doesn't allow you to get any further, sometimes it's not helpful because you got it wrong the first time. So you didn't understand the concept. And that was one of the things that Ofsted was finding with some online programs, is actually sometimes the learner got not a very good experience because it didn't suit their learning needs.
Yeah.
So
it's a really important point. And I think particularly in higher education as well, forget we assume learners are advanced and they have those basics, but we do need to often, we can't assume. It's the curse of knowledge, isn't it? When we're experienced
absolutely.
in something and we kind of, it's intuitive and second nature to us, it takes a lot of effort to remember that we need to scaffold that understanding for learners.
And that's right, because when we were doing classroom teaching, there was a tutor that I was managing, and they were absolutely red hot at maths. I mean, I know that's English, okay, but I'm still going to say it. They were absolutely red hot, but absolutely could not understand why this learner couldn't get it. They couldn't empathize because they were never in that situation, because they always understood every concept of maths. And I'm trying to sort of sit with this tutor and go, except they're not getting it, are they? So we need to find a way that this learner, we speak to this learner, this individual, because as much as you know what you're doing, the learner obviously doesn't. And you're not speaking to them in a way that they understand.
That's it. Isn't it? Empathy is the key.
Love a bit of empathy, me.
Yeah, it's so important. And I like your point earlier. You mentioned about, rather than focusing on Ofsted readiness, it's about a positive, good learner experience, and that's what it should be about, right? That's why
Absolutely
Ofsted are there. They're meant to be there, is to ensure that the learners are getting a good experience. So that should be what we prioritize.
There's a lot going on in posts at the moment, and I've sent a post off a couple of weeks ago, and basically it was about the SAR, right, self-assessment report, and everybody's getting all wound up with a SAR, of how to write a SAR and what should it be. But actually a SAR is for the training provider. It's not for Ofsted. I have seen many a really bad SAR because it's not written for the company. It was written for Ofsted. I've seen SARs that I haven't understood. Literally no idea. And if a senior manager doesn't understand it, how am I going to, how is anybody else? It's really difficult, because what was being done is we were using jargonistic words that we thought would impress an Ofsted. And even 2 weeks ago, I was looking at a SAR and I'm sort of saying to the training provider, "Who's this for? What does this mean? What?"
Yeah.
They went, "Oh, we don't know."
That's such a good point.
Yeah, totally. Because the fact is, it's a business plan. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think kind of linking it to learning as well. As some of the modules I have to teach on the program that I run, the apprenticeship program, are around, they're kind of focus on the work-based learning side of things, and there's a lot of reflection built in. I think there's a quote, I can't remember who said it, that, we don't learn from experience, we learn through reflecting on experience. Right? It doesn't just happen.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like the SAR,
Yeah.
like related, it's meant to be a reflective process to look at yourself, and nobody else can do that for you. And you're not trying to jump through hoops. It's just to encourage you to reflect on what is your provision doing at the moment.
And to square the circle is that the only way that you'll really know what your provision is doing is if you ask the learner. And by asking the learner, I do not mean a survey with you've got the happy face and the unhappy face and the mildly happy face, or the sometimes, always, never. Because I know when I have a questionnaire like that, it irritates me, because I'm thinking, one, I don't fit in with any of those answers. Two, your question is too simplistic. It's like when you do one of these personality questions, isn't it? And they say, answer it quickly. And I think, no, it can't be, because I don't know how I'm going to feel at any particular time. It's today I'm feeling like this. They're not a good indication sometimes of how learners are actually feeling. The best way of finding out how a learner is feeling is actually to speak to them, but not to interrupt. So when you're a training provider and you speak to a learner and you say, oh, so how's how are you getting on with your maths or your English? And they go, oh, it's really tough. But and the trainer didn't turn up. And they go, oh, yeah, well, that's because they were sick. No. The trainer didn't turn up. That's it. Don't put your reason for it in. You listen to what the learner is saying. Go away and go, okay, we may have a problem. Why didn't the and why are they not having a good idea? Not just to say, oh, well, it's not our fault, because and I go back to Ofsted, because Ofsted will come in and go, well, I don't care. Your learner hasn't been seen. Why is that? And that's when we bring the Ofsted bit in.
Yeah, no, that is so important. I know from my experience at our institution, which hopefully might be an example of good practice. I don't know. You'll probably have an opinion on
I'll
it.
have a look.
So I know internally within the organisation, other academics from different departments, they have an awareness of apprenticeships, but they'll as part of it's combined observation of our teaching. So I've been observed, but then I kind of step out virtually, because a lot of our lessons happening online. And then they have a chat with the learners as a group. Maybe there's a case for chatting to learners one-to-one. I don't know as well. But and I obviously haven't been in any of these conversations, because they recommended that I as the teacher, step out so they can have an honest discussion. And I think that's been good. And then it's been reported back to me, and we kind of close that loop, and there are ways to improve. So that seems to be going quite well. But you need that, like you say, I think you need that internal independence, I think, is a good thing. I obviously talk to my learners all the time and have a good relationship with them, but you need that kind of that independence as well. And then looking at how you can improve, and kind of documenting that, I think, as well. But so what's your take on that? And I suppose as a link question, any other good practices that you've maybe come across that you think are beneficial for providers on that side of things?
I mean, I find that if the learner is at the heart of the training provider, and it's really quite easy, simple and quick to find that out, then whatever we find, it's an easy fix. It's an easy fix. And because we can do, okay, this is happening, this isn't working as well as we thought it would, we can fix this. And sometimes it happens. This is no disrespect for larger organizations, but they have to be really quite careful to make sure their departments are tight, so that the care of the learner is involved in every one of those departments. Because obviously from the top, you're going to miss stuff, aren't you? Because it's a big organization. But there needs to be that cohesiveness in departments, that the learner is always learner centered. And if it is learner centered, then that's great. And I think that with good practice, absolute good practice for any training provider, is to leave your ego behind. Just, listen, what's happening. Don't think, oh my God, how dare they, whatever. Leave your ego behind. Because you know what? That way you can suck all of the information up and you can make it better. Because and that's it's for anybody, for any tutor, whatever. If you are genuinely interested in what your learner's saying, you don't come out with, well, I don't believe they're saying that, or that's because of forget it, leave the ego. Let's sit the ego down and go, right, okay, where are we coming from? How can I make this better? What do I need to learn? That's basically, I would suggest that's a best practice. Very
It's a really
conceptual.
important point. Yeah, that's kind of fundamental, right? And I imagine you're raising this because you must have seen it. I imagine you've seen this kind of problem.
Well, yeah, but we've all got egos, haven't we?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. We all
just a little
have,
bit,
you
just a
know.
little bit.
Yeah, of course we have. Yeah. Oh, you know, I mean, if I see like a comment, you know, that's sort of like questioning, I'm going.
Yeah, exactly.
But the fact is to then put it to one side, you know. So yeah, we've all got egos. Yes, of course we see them, because particularly when I walk into a place, I mean that virtually, it is easy to get expect that everything is fantastic, because we all hope, don't we? But I think the thing is with anything from an inspection planning point of view, is that as long as you're not there like a rabbit in headlights, right, just expecting an axe to fall, yeah, then you've got a better chance, because you need to be in control. That's all you need to be. You need to know what's going on. You need to, when there's something's going on, you need to have it in your quip. You need to say, this is how we're going to put it right, by when, who's responsible, and get it put right. And that way it shows that you are, and you know what the learners are saying. So that way you are in total control of your apprenticeship program. That's it, really. You know, I mean, there's I see lots of good practice, but that's sort of the fundamentals.
Yeah, it starts with that fundamental principles, isn't it? And then the rest should follow. Are you seeing, are there any sort of particular kind of big problems, or the biggest problems that apprenticeship providers are struggling with, that you're seeing at the moment or over the last couple of years?
Look, at the moment, we've gone through such a shift. The training, I mean, the training providers have gone through such a shift. We've lost training providers. Training has been halted. It's been and when halted, I mean taken off program, or there's been break in learnings. Financially, there can't have been a worse time that training providers have been in, because they can't be hitting any target for completions. Hopefully that's getting better. But while each time that we do keep getting not allowed into somewhere because of COVID, because that keeps happening, it's still happening now, we will find it really difficult. But also one of the problems that I think we're facing is that our learners have come with a set of skills that we don't have. Because they're from a background that are so aware of technology. We've had to learn it. You know, they're saying now that the next sort of tranche of learners that are coming in this year will be the first ones that haven't learnt it. They've been born with it.
Yeah.
We've had to learn everything. So it's, and also, I mean, people who know me will smile. I always say I do blame Sesame Street. So in Sesame Street,
well, it's obvious when you think about it.
Absolutely, in Sesame Street, you'd get the audience to look for 10 minutes, and then there'd be an advert. Yeah, because it's American television. Yeah, we used to have story time, didn't we? We did. and Jack and Ori, and to sit there and somebody be there for half an hour reading a book to you, right? We've sort of lost that now, and also with the scrolling and everything else, we want instant gratification, and that's going to change, should be changing the way that we teach, because we have to teach to the learners that are coming in now. Now that's quite difficult, isn't it? Because of all our tutors have had to learn, and because we've only got to see the children that are growing up now. They've got different. We're told how to manage millennials. There's a different way of managing. But do you know what? It's right, because they have come with a different set of mindsets, and our learners have as well. And I think we need to embrace it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so that's certainly one of the problems we're coming up.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I think there's probably a great degree of variation across the particular standards as well, right?
Absolutely.
I suppose, but again, my background is working in digital standards, so digital technology solution professional. So we're kind of teaching digital, using digital tools. So it's all quite natural to a certain degree, and often at a degree level they're in a job, and they're often doing very advanced stuff.
Yeah.
So I get an easy ride. But with like maybe the earlier level apprenticeships and the non-technical apprenticeships, there's a completely two different layers there. Which is
completely. Yeah. And also teaching of those particular apprentices as well. So it's the teaching is different, because they won't have come across the technology in the same way that you have, the same way that you use it every single day. So there's those things. But I think it's brilliant. I think we are absolutely just at the cusp of really being able to look at the different platforms that are about, the things that are happening, the online stuff. I think it's absolutely a perfect time that we're involved in training. What we've got to do is we've got to embrace it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's scary for many, and I think many might feel, for example, that software is a solution. If you pick the right platform, pick the right software, that will solve the problem. But with learning, and it's all about the learning design, and you can have a very basic kind of learning platform, but it's all about how you structure those learning experiences. And it's not all about content as well. A colleague I know who's been head of learning at an educational sort of edtech startup, she's very vocal about learning design. That's her background, and it's not all about content. We feel when we're designing a module or designing a program or designing a learning experience, it needs to be content. We need to create all this content and create videos and all this high quality content. But actually you can flip it, and rather than having like 90% content, you can have 10% content and structure activities and discussions and discovery and experiences. And that is difficult to do, and it has to adapt. You have to adapt it to work online and face to face, but it's so important.
At the very beginning of the apprenticeship, so when somebody decided to take an MVQ off of a shelf and put it with English and maths, and that made an apprenticeship or a bit of a diploma, we'll whack that in as well. At the very beginning of that, what we said was, it's not the question, it's the answer. So it's not, it's not what we teach, it's what they learn that's the most important thing. Because and one of the big bugbears I have is about the sequencing of curriculum. Because if the learner isn't doing a particular skill, knowledge or behavior at that particular time, teaching it on the apprenticeship, because it's part of a unit and it's unit 3, and unit 3 is always done on week 3, because that's just it. If they're not doing it, there you go. Yes. So the fact is, they're not going to learn, because they've now not been able to use it. Similarly, if a learner is doing something at work and we're not teaching it because that's unit 5 and that's way down the line, we're not even going to touch that again. It's not helpful. there are things called individual learning plans, and they're called that for a reason, because they're based, and they need to be moved sometime because to fit in with the learner.
Right.
Yeah. So that's so we were talking about the content. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so in degree apprenticeships particularly. I think that's a real tough balance to strike. I see that from the inside, because degree apprenticeships, some are good, some are not so good. I think
Mhm.
we're the program I'm back. I have to redesign it soon, so I'm gonna obviously make it better. But it is very based around modules, and there's sequential learning, and you're doing a degree, which it is that is what it is. But it's not designed, and obviously all the knowledge, skills, and behaviors from the apprenticeship standard are kind of meant to be embedded and kind of mapped, and that the kind of learning happens as they go with assignments. But they're obviously doing lots of stuff in their workplace as well.
Yeah.
That actually on the way I think degree apprentices are normally run, that they're 4 days a week, or that that 80% of their time. Of course, the 20% off the job rule has just changed recently, of course, hasn't it? It's gone down to
Yeah.
6 hours a week instead of 20%. Newsflash.
Yeah.
There's always something changing, but it's not captured really. And I think that in the degree apprenticeship space, I think it's very difficult because of higher education, where they're kind of coming from. Whereas at kind of below level 6, one would hope that the programs are designed explicitly around those knowledge, skills, and behaviors, and you have that discussion to adjust the learning plan based on what those apprentices are doing in their workplace.
But you see, I did my degree in leadership and management, and I did that with the Open University.
Yeah.
Brilliant, because being a senior manager, they gave me a theory. I thought, I love this theory, and I've got an assignment to do this change. It was a change and inspire. One of the units was change and inspire. I can do this, and I did, and it was great, and it was lovely, and it was the best thing I ever did, because every time I'd go into work so excited that I could put this in action, and when it actually it worked, and then I had to do a few tweaks and all of those things. That's learning in action.
Yeah, exactly.
It was the best time. The last year was awful, because basically we went through all of the theories and said they were all rubbish. It was like, okay, that's a bit sad. But the point is, the first 3 years was brilliant, and it meant that everything you learn, and that's what the apprenticeships should be about, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And I know I have to teach on modules that we have those opportunities where they have to go and do like a little research project in their workplace, and it's fantastic. Sometimes really good projects come out of those. I think what doesn't happen is it coming the other way, sort of capturing opportunities from things that they're doing across those 3 years that could actually contribute to their credits, to their learning, to their kind of
Yeah.
portfolio. But we're
But
kind
I
of reliant
think,
on
though,
the prescribed program.
yeah, I think, though, that we then come down to employer support then, don't we? Because we
Yeah.
do need that employer, and that's from apprenticeship level. So I had a conversation today over chat. I hate those. Anyway, chat thing. Basically, she got a member of staff that was doing an apprenticeship, was about to start in September. It was with a university, and she didn't know, and she wanted to help this employee toward the costs. And I went, sorry.
Right.
So I said, so you haven't been involved at all, and she's due to start. Presumably that's been sorted out. And she said, no, I don't think so. She said, no, she thinks she started. She's pretty sure she started in September, and it's a very, very structured apprenticeship, very specialised. And I went, right, we need to chat about this because there's something not right. Why haven't you? What? When you listen to something, can you think, really? Did that?
Mm-hmm.
So the employer hasn't been involved at all, and the learner has gone through the startup that has been signed up. What?
Yeah, that's a little bit worrying, isn't it?
Tiny bit. Yeah, that's one word. That's one way of saying it. But
Yeah.
these things are happening. These things are
And
happening.
how
And
do
then
you
you
think
get
that's
the, sorry,
happened?
go on.
Is that, how do you think that's happened? Is that because like the learner has been tasked with finding a provider that they want to engage with, and they've been given the license to go and
No,
start, and then they've just been left to get on with it?
if only that was the case. No, they didn't know about it. As
Right.
far as I'm aware, because obviously I haven't had this chat, because I thought I've got to find out more, because there are so many, because apparently they've tried to speak to the provider or the university, and it's all been a bit muddled. And I thought, well, do you know the right questions to ask?
Yeah.
Because if you don't ask
Sometimes
the
the
right
problem.
questions, you ain't going to find out, are you? And if you don't know what questions to ask, and it appears to me that it was like a staff meeting that the employee's name was just brought up. So yeah, that needs to be, but as we know, the employer needs to be part of that apprenticeship team.
Yeah.
It's the employer, it's the learner, and it's a training provider. That's it. That's the team.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
unless you're all working together, it's not going to be the most successful apprenticeship.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the employer needs to commit to the program as well. We think the learner is the one that has to commit to the program, but the employer does as well.
Do you know what? I used to, in some of the old days, used to go around, I used to speak to the employers, and I go, do you know what? The learner, like whoever the name is, can work as hard as they can. They can be absolutely fully committed. They can be loving the cause. We can be working so hard to get that learner through. But unless you support her, I guarantee it's not going to work. It's going to be you. It's going to be you that needs to give that person the opportunity to the support at work, because there's no other. There needs to be support at work. They need to know where she is, what's she doing, what's her progress, be interested. Without that, we're pretty much doomed, or it'll be hard, and it won't be it won't be a good experience for the learner.
Yeah, they'll feel like they're sort of battling against the tide all the time, aren't they?
Absolutely.
With no support.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, that role, that workplace is, I suppose might call them different things, but I tend to refer to them as workplace mentors, which
Call them what you like. Yeah.
often it's, and I see this firsthand. Often it falls to line managers, which is fine, but not all line managers are created equal, and some have got a team of 10, some have got a team of 150, depending on what level they're
Absolutely.
at, and it really varies what kind of engagement we get. But if you structure in those regular catch-ups, like get the kind of three-way or tripartite catch-ups, then that at least it airs the necessity to communicate about the apprentice's progress. And then it's that ongoing communication, isn't it? And adapting. If they're not getting the support they need, then suitable interventions can be put in place.
Very much. And there's a lot of programs now, the programs that e-portfolios, let's call them, and they go and the employer can have a login, and the employer can see exactly where that learner is, and this is all fantastic. The employer's got to log in.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's, you know what, it's a waste of time. So it's, as I say, we go back to, it's not the question, it's the answer. It's not the system, it's how it's used. You know,
totally.
That's always the way, isn't it?
Yeah. And just having a system, I see that as well. The line managers that I deal with, they don't engage with online system. It's really done through conversations. Although I think they can be set up with online logins. I don't see them doing it, and unless they have a reason to, or a specific thing that they have to do that they can understand, why would they? And that's the other thing. Just by systemizing something for the sake of it, so systemizing, setting them up with a login and saying you can check their progress at any time. Like, why would they?
And that's the thing.
They have a particular reason to.
And that's the
just
thing.
Human nature, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's a shame. It's just the fact that somebody, though, and even if it's a colleague, somebody needs to have a real interest in that person. Because if you have got, say, a line manager who's got so many people, they're not it, then are they?
Yeah.
You know, sorry, you didn't pass the test. I need somebody else, because you can't, this learner really does need that commitment. And if it isn't you, can you tell me who it is? Because it may be there's like a supervisor or somebody who's got less people because we're the best one in the world. I know you're going to say it at this time I absolutely know you are going to say, I'm going to try my best. And I know you are going to try your best, but it's not going to be good enough.
Yeah, it's often the thing that gets bumped off the bottom of the list for busy managers, isn't it?
Well, yeah, so particularly when you've got a bottom line. Yeah, you've got a bottom line. You've got a profit. You've got money. You've got to be able to pay everybody else's wages, for goodness sake. Get that, However, there needs to be somebody that has got that learner in mind.
Very much so.
No matter who it is, because they need to have that support mechanism, don't they? But yeah, so it seems to me that apprenticeships at degree level and whatever level we're talking about actually have the same sort of issues.
Yeah, I think definitely. Well, there's issues everywhere, right? And it's complex everywhere.
Oof.
I think
Yeah.
the benefit of higher education maybe is the kind of robust approach and kind of quality assurance, etc. But on the other hand, that can sometimes work against it. Kind of can potentially stifle parts of the program. But from in the level 4, level 3, level 2, maybe you have more freedom, more creativity to develop a program, but typically smaller funding bands, and maybe less commitment from an academic kind of learning point of view. So it's tough all the way through, I think.
Yeah, I do think from a quality point of view, I've never met a quality manager yet who hasn't really cared, about the quality. It's the other problems that we've got, as well as which we've already gone into, that that has an effect. But absolutely, there's nobody that says, do you know what, I hate this job and I don't want to do it.
Yeah, well, they don't last long if
well, no,
if no approach, right?
No. Well, let us hope.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, I think quality of program, all like coming back to your earlier point, it all comes down to the learner experience, I think, and how they're experiencing it.
Yeah.
I think one final point I wanted to discuss with you was around initial assessment, which
okay.
I call it initial needs assessment. Some call it just initial assessment. There are there's different terminology. So I refer to it as initial needs assessment, or INA. I know there's been some recent legislation changes, I believe, around how you can explicitly allocate budget from your program to the initial assessment. I imagine with the aim of making it a more tangible and proper process, because it's so important to define, like you were talking about earlier, the individual learning plan. But so I was just wondering, from your point of view, what's your take on initial assessment, and like, have you seen good examples of how it's done, and how how can it be done effectively?
As I say, with all the posts that I've been doing, everybody knows what I think about initial assessments, because I do talk about it time and time again. But to my mind, at the end of an initial assessment, you know exactly what your learner is capable of. You know exactly what they've done in a previous life. So you don't have to go over that again. You know exactly what. And what about needs analysis rather than a needs? Yeah, see, because that's what because I like the word needs now. Now I've got used to you saying that. I like the because it's what they need, isn't it? And it's an analysis of
I can't
their
claim
needs.
credit for it, by the way.
Oh, you could have done. I wouldn't have known. It could have been all yours. Anyway, the point being is that I don't like, as people know, I don't like ticky boxes. I don't like smiley faces. I don't like going through the unit by unit and going, I don't know, typing a letter. I normally every day sometimes do this, don't like that. It needs to be it needs to be a chat. The learner needs to be really nice and relaxed, so that we really do get to know all about them, but that we absolutely have assessed their English and maths needs, where they are now, because as we are aware, both of us, we can have passed any single English or maths test in the past. We could. Whether we could pass it today would be open to, because we don't use it every day. So I think to really know, and we know that even if it's not part of the program, or they're exempt, do you know what? It still helps. It really does, doesn't it, to go through it again, and anybody that can be brought up a stage with their functional skills, I think is a brilliant thing. And I think there's a lot of learners speaking to them, they go, "Oh, I've done that, so I'm exempt." And you think, what a shame, because actually you could go back and do it and learn. And it's that light bulb moment. You think, oh yeah, I used to do that. I remember that now. So I think, so from my point of view, from the needs, I'm going to call it a needs analysis. I can't, because it's just going to confuse people. From the initial assessment, we know what we need to know, what they know, so we don't go over it, what they need to know, and what they're capable of, and what they're capable of doing. What's their goal, so that we've all got a goal in our minds. So the employer's got that goal, we've got the goal, the learner's got a clear goal of where they're working towards, and that they always know where they are in that goal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's it. It's it's not just a tick box exercise like self-rating against the knowledge, skills, and behaviors on the apprenticeship standard. I like the idea of that goal, which is above and beyond the standard, right? I mean, I presume we could be talking about what are their aspirations, and that's, I think, something that we encourage.
Exactly.
We probably don't do it as well as we could, but we ask a couple of questions alongside our initial assessment around, do they understand the commitment, or in your own words, explain your understanding of the program and its structure and what you're committing to, which is one way of trying to get them to articulate their understanding of it, and also
that's good.
what are their aspirations, which it's but I think it's a balance, right? Because we do need that documentary evidence, right, for
without doubt.
Ofsted.
And
but we
all
need
needs to be written down. Totally. Everything. Talking to training providers, the best ones are the ones that do it on the fly. They're brilliant, but it all needs to be written down. So take a recording. I don't care. Just, if it's a chat, a recording, and then add that evidence wherever you need to add it, that's fine. But I do think that what we want to do with the apprentices is not just get them to complete the apprenticeship, that actually they're a rounded human being that's actually capable of doing more outside their apprenticeship. I think that's that's when we talk about stretch and challenge, we're all very much into, just hard questions, give them a link. It's so much more than that, isn't it? And it's having the learner at the heart. It's really wanting that learner to grow in the industry or another industry, or find a job wherever they are on their apprenticeship journey. It's making sure that they get there and more, to my mind.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that. It's not just about knowledge transfer. It's not just about stuffing content into our brains, because we can open YouTube and do that. That's not what it's about, right? I think learning is, obviously, I'm fairly passionate about it. I'm in the middle of it. I'm always learning, but I think learning becomes self-perpetuating when you learn how to learn, right? And any learning experience should be helping you develop, to some degree, learning how to learn. And at level 2 apprenticeship, you don't need to be going into, kind of brain biology and sort of metacognition and talking about all these kind of maybe complex terms, but you can coach somebody to think about, okay, how can we figure that out? Like, if you're on your own, how would you
problem solving,
or who would you go to? It's kind of problem solving, right? And build on that. That should be I think a fundamental sort of thread all the way through all these apprenticeship programs, is learning how to learn and beyond.
And let's not forget, when we are talking about an apprentice who has walked off the street into a job, that they've got to learn about working.
That's true.
The whole working environment, because they're not at school. Do you know what? At 4 o'clock, they've still got to stay at a desk.
Big adjustment.
And it's a huge adjustment, and I don't think we understand that. So there was a government scheme, and it said you can have £400 to any employer who picks up an apprentice, blah blah blah. And I was sending posts out to say, have you really thought about this? Is 4,000 is 4,000 going to cover the responsibility you've got to that child? Because that's basically what they are when they're coming out. They have they've never gone to work before. They've never interacted with other adults on the same wavelength before, that are now their peers. It's a whole new ball game. So I absolutely applaud any employer that takes on an apprentice, because it's really hard work, but very rewarding when at the end of it, you've got an employee that absolutely knows your company, the company culture, it fitting in really well, is like a sponge and sucking up all this information. It can be brilliant, but it's a huge, huge responsibility to take on as well.
Yeah, and I feel I know there's been some recent statistics about the kind of annual completion rates, which is a kind of good old statistic to look at or not. But the I think it's around, it's between 60 and 70% on average, I believe, isn't it? Or no, was it below 60%? I can't remember. Don't quote me on that. Whoever's listening and watching, it's around 60% or possibly just below on average. But I know from my experience working in like digital degree apprenticeships, it's kind of 80-90%. And that means there's a lot of programs that are a heck of a lot lower than 60-50%. And often, obviously, there's lots of different factors, and I'm sure somebody is looking at those particular programs, I would hope, and identifying the real causes to that. And maybe sometimes it's maybe the apprentice is not sure of what they're getting into, like we're talking about, the employers not really committing, maybe not through their own fault, but not knowing what they should be committing to be able to support that learner. And that's vital, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. As I say, I think it's the most rewarding thing that anybody could do, to get involved in an apprentice and to see them from the beginning to the very end. But it's also the most frustrating and really challenging thing. It can be, it will be, it is, because it's dealing with people, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never
so I think no, and it's not. And I think for us involved in it is not only we're dealing with the people, we're also dealing with lots of colleagues that are all trying to hopefully point the right way. And as long as we are all pointing the right way, that's a better journey than if we've got people in your company that are doing completely different things. That makes your life a lot harder, I think.
Yeah. It's a constant, like we spoke earlier, it's a constant journey trying to help get everybody else on the same, a similar journey.
We've gone round in a circle, isn't that good?
Focusing in the right direction. No, it's perfect. Well, and I'd certainly echo the sentiment there about just the enjoyment of seeing these apprentices flourish. That's what I love. I love teaching, but teaching on apprenticeships is fantastic, because you see how they grow, and you see what they produce as part of that experience. So I would definitely echo that. So thank you so much, Andrea, for taking the time to have a chat. We've covered lots of good stuff there. I'm sure I learned loads. I'm sure I'm gonna have to get back over it, and there's a few things I need to look up. Hopefully those that listened or watched found it beneficial as well. And so thank you again. I'm sure we'll be in touch again. I'll see you on LinkedIn. Keep on doing your videos. Keep on spreading the good word about apprenticeships.
Yeah, thanks very much. Okay, bye-bye.
Take care.